What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for tuning in on today's video. We're back on the 7.3 project. We wrapped up the Beehive valve springs and we're going to move to the next step of completing some work underneath the valve covers on both sides of this engine. Stay tuned, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. So here you can see all of our beautiful valve springs done up on both sides of this engine. And now we are going to move to head studs. So we've got an ARP head stud kit for the 7.3 Powerstroke. We've got shorter studs on this side. We've got the long studs on this side. These are the ones that are going to go along, the shorter ones are going to go along the intake manifold. So right along the top here, 1, 2, 3, 4. On both sides, those are going to be for the shorter studs. We've got all of our hardware lined up here. We've got our Allen head to spin these studs in. We've got our 14mm 12-point socket for the nuts. We've got some ARP lube. And guys, we're going to be doing these studs one at a time on the 7.3. Now, in the 7.3 world, doing head studs one at a time is a big topic of discussion. This particular truck back behind us has 326,000 miles on it. It does not have a head gasket problem, and we are going to be reusing the seasoned head gasket that is on this engine. And by doing these studs one at a time and following a very particular sequence for torquing our head studs, we are going to have a head gasket that is going to hold up very, very well for the power level that we are going to be at with this engine. So let's go over the torque sequence that we're going to be using. We're going to be doing it in a couple different steps and how we're going to go through this process of one at a time. So right here, this is the ARP torque sequence. You can see they've got step 1, 2, and 3. They want you, if you had pulled the heads off and we're putting down a fresh head gasket, this is the sequence you would follow: 1, 2, 3 at 45, 85, and 125. You can see that the final sequence here is actually backwards. So you're starting at 1 down here, 2, 3, 4, and so on. We are going to be kind of following this, but kind of also not following this. We are going to be starting, when we put our first stud in, we're going to start with number 1 right there, and we're going to follow this to 2, and then 3, 4, and 5, and so on. And we're going to do each one at a time, and we're going to start our first torque on our first stud, and our first sequence is going to be at 100 foot-pounds. And then from there, we're going to do a 115, and then finally at the same sequence, and then finally we're going to finish it off at 125 in this backwards sequence down here. So it's still a 3-step process. It's just that we are going to be negating the first two, 45 and 85, and that is because we need to not disturb or upset the current head gasket that is on this truck. So as stated before, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pull this bolt right here in the center. We're going to pull that one out. We're going to clean the threads and the hole, make sure that it's nice and dry. And we're going to go ahead and thread our first stud in, lubricate our nut and washer, and we're going to torque that to 100 foot-pounds, and then we can go ahead and move to the next one and repeat the process following the sequence. So I'm going to do this first one live with you guys. We've got a 15mm socket on a 1/2-inch bar here. We're going to go ahead and crack this first one loose. Here we go. So this next step is fairly important. We want to make sure that these threads are nice and clean. Which that bolt came out pretty nice. So we're just gonna squirt some brake clean. I like to kind of fill up the hole with brake clean. We'll let it kind of sit for a second, we'll go ahead and suck it dry, and then we're gonna use some compressed air, and we'll blow compressed air down that hole, make sure it's nice and clean, and then we'll go ahead and get our stud in. I always just lightly, ARP says to put these in finger tight. I always run them down just lightly with this because it's easier to use. Then you'll feel it stop, and then we'll just back it off 90 degrees. Just like that, good to go. So for that hole, we needed to use one of the long ones, so that's what we put in there. And now we're just going to lubricate with our ARP lube, lubricate both sides of the washer. And then we lubricate the bottom side of the nut. I usually put just a little bit inside of the nut. And now this guy is ready to be installed and torqued down. Go ahead and drop our washer on first. Thread our nut on. Run it down. Like I said, our first torque is going to be to 100 foot-pounds. That's pretty close to the factory spec for the bolt, and that's why we're doing that, so we don't disturb the gasket on the first torque sequence. We're at 100 foot-pounds here. We need to try to do this in one smooth motion. When we get close, see if we can get it here, right there. First one's done. On to number 2. Okay, so we have finally completed our first one at a time, 100 foot-pounds, each one individually, one at a time. And yeah, everything went smoothly. I'm gonna flip over the camera. We had to do one little thing to gain clearance on one of them. Well, to gain clearance on a couple of them, but the next step is going to be to torque them to 115. So it should just be one good swing. We're gonna get them to 115, and then we will do the final torque sequence in that different sequence on ARP's sheet there at the final torque of 125. So let me show you guys a couple things. So for this stud right here, there's a barb fitting that comes out. You do have to remove that barb fitting, not that big of a deal. And then obviously you guys can see the air box, part of the air box is gone here. That is to gain access for removing the head bolts and the studs down there. We also had to do that for the springs on that last cylinder back there as well. So we're gonna follow the exact same sequence, this first one at 115, and then we will jump to the 125 and follow the second sequence, which starts with the very bottom one over there. So let's do it. And there it is, guys. We are now studded on the passenger side. You can see our top four are the shorter studs. Looking good. That's going to wrap up today's video, guys. We have to repeat that process over on the driver's side. I'm not going to bore you guys with a bunch of time lapse on this side. You get the idea. That's the process. That's the method that I have used with success. So stay tuned. We have push rods. We got to put the rocker arms back in, and I want to go over the big injectors that we have for this truck that are going to go in so that we can hopefully in the next video get the valve covers sealed up and move on to the next part of this build. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure if you guys are new, subscribe, like, and drop a comment, and we will see you guys in the next video.